You found the webinar for the Happy Giraffe budget. So either you're very curious or very confused about why a giraffe is part of budgeting. Either way, you're in the right place. We're a nonprofit that helps people find happiness in budgeting. I know that's a tall order, pun intended. But even if we just make budgeting more bearable, this will be worth your time. In this webinar, we'll walk through everything you need to know, how the giraffe got involved, why other budgeting methods might not have worked for you, the story behind our system, how it all works, and why it has been able to help so many people budget happy. You'll also see some questions and responses from the original webinar. Some of those questions are based on the first chapter of our budgeting book. Don't worry if you haven't read it, you'll still get a lot out of this. This is the perfect place to start before jumping into our free app or our free spreadsheet. So grab a snack, get comfy, and let's jump right into a happier way to budget. So yeah, any kind of budgeting process. Great, Jason, you've used an Excel spreadsheet. That's been really common. I've been surprised to hear that one so much. But I like using Excel too, so that works. That's good. Yeah.
Too complicated.
Yeah. That happens a lot. It's easy to make things too complicated. That seems to be what a lot of them do well. You've never used a budget, you need to. Yes, that's that's also fairly common too. It's one of those things you hope you can just ignore and not have to pay attention to. Yeah, the next one.
You can do the next question. I'll start at this.
Okay. And also, if you can, in the chat again, if you've got a budget that you're actively using right now, put it in there. And then how long have you used that? So Peter, yours would be 0. That's okay. But Mel, Jason, are you using one right now? Celine?
Never used a budget.
Okay.
You guys are here. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good start. I can understand wanting to avoid budgeting for as long as possible.
All right, now looking to restart. Awesome.
Nice, nice. Good. So yeah, you guys are all in the right place. This is good.
Yeah, so we've tried lots of different budgets.
Yep.
Lots of different. Oh, Jason, what did you got? Got organize our expense on spreadsheet. Generally, stinking budgets, right? This is the same thing with us. We've tried so many different ways, and we just kept failing time and time again for one reason or another. Like you said, it either takes too much time or they're too complicated, they're too hard to stick to, lots of different reasons, right? So hopefully you've read the story that we sent you about the happy giraffe. If not, that's okay. But we're going to be using the story as the basis of our discussion today. Awesome, Peter. So I know it's written like a children's story, but it's a representation of our own story and kind of the struggle that we went through while learning how to budget. Like I said, we tried lots of different ways and found lots of ways to fail. So sounds like that's been your similar experience for some of you. So we totally feel your pain. And luckily, we figured out something that works really well and helped us feel confident and even happy about our money.
Yeah, so just a side note, you'll hear that word happy many more times as we talk about this, because I really believe that budgeting well can help you find more happiness in your life.
Yeah. And the reality is that most of us weren't taught how to budget well. And you kind of proved in your comments a minute ago that we've all tried things, but they just don't seem to work. And we don't feel like those failings are your fault. We feel like that's the process's fault. So using I think we can probably guess what you'll use, but using the reactions Show us how you feel about budgeting. Those little, yep, there you go, Mel.
Yep, the sad. That's questioning.
Confused,
Oh,
sad, super
got the
sad.
got the explosion ones.
Yeah. So we are hoping, because we know that budgets are important, right? And they're necessary. So we are hoping that through this meeting, we can get you from those emojis, those feelings, to at least tolerating a spreadsheet or a budget, but hopefully we can get you all the way to happy with your budget.
Yeah. So really quick, I do want to tell you what this class is not. It's not a list of life hacks or suggestions about how to save money or how you should or should not spend your money. None of that is actually helpful. That's why a lot of these budgets you've probably tried have failed, and it's not going to make you happy.
Yeah. So we don't get to tell you what to spend your money on, because happiness looks different for you than it does for me. It's a personal choice. We spent over $1,000 at McDonald's one year when we actually had a really tight budget. We were barely scraping by, but that was our choice because we had little kids and I was exhausted. We had a baby that cried if she was at home. So that was where we could go. And that was our choice. Not a great choice, but it was our choice. And we stayed on budget that whole time. Um, and luckily, McDonald's at that time made us happy. But now we are able to avoid going there. And we have found other things that we enjoy. So, as we learn how to budget, just know that I'm not going to judge you for what you want to spend your money on. Neither is Nigel.
Yep, pickleball is one of the things we choose now.
So, okay, so let's talk about what a budget is and what it should be. So, the definition from dictionary.com says that it's an estimate of expected income and expenses for a given period in the future. And Nigel added, created so that you don't spend more than you earn. He added that part so that you can see what it is, but then also why it exists. So, with this definition, a budget is super simple. It doesn't need to be complicated and overwhelming. It doesn't need to include your whole investment portfolio or expensive apps or coupon clipping or cute printables from the internet or even 100 different categories to track and create this amazing history of everything you've ever purchased. In fact, if somebody tells you that your budget needs those things, they're probably just trying to sell you something. So, really, a budget is just looking ahead, coming up with an estimate of your income and then an estimate of your expenses. And it only exists to help you see that future more clearly so that you don't spend more than you earn. And that's it. So, 2 years from now, the only thing you'll have left from budgeting well is the fact that you haven't spent more than you earned, and also the peace that comes from knowing that you're doing okay financially, which is totally worth it. So, hopefully, that definition removes some of that weight and expectation that you're putting on your budget, but also maybe that expectation that you're putting on yourself as well. So, before we jump into creating our budget, we're going to follow the story of our happy giraffe, and we're going to talk about some of the principles of that story, because we feel like the journey is important to understand and think about first. So,
Okay, so we're going to go to our first poll question. So that's, again, if you're on a desktop, it's the bottom right corner. It's those little shapes down there. Let me go turn it on so you guys can see it. That'll help. Launch. There we go. Okay, so what was the first animal the giraffe encountered? And also, just so you know, you have to click your answer, and then you have to scroll down a little bit more and click vote. Apparently, it's a two-step process. It makes it a little harder, but yeah, we've got the jay, the elephant, the chipmunk, the lion. Which one did the giraffe encounter first?
and you're welcome to guess on any of these.
Yes,
There's
you can totally
no,
guess.
it's just for fun.
Yep, you're not getting graded.
In fact, we don't know who voted for what. So,
Nope. Yeah, I got 3 for the elephant. Elephant there. One for the J. Okay, we're going to end it in 3, 2, 1. Nice.
Okay. So yes, the elephant was the correct answer. In the story, we have a giraffe. Are you switching slides or no?
Oh, there it is.
There we go. In the story, we have a giraffe who is learning how to balance spending money while having a limited income, and he does that with his leaves. Right, his leaves are kind of his money. And the first time through, he fails horribly. But then an elephant comes along and he gets some advice from him. And elephants, as we know, never forget a thing, right? So they're good at tracking everything. And he tells a giraffe that he needs to be better at writing everything down. So you can raise your hand if you want, but how many of us have done that? How many have attempted to start a new budget by writing down everything you've spent for the past month?
Yeah, Mel, done that. Yep, Peter.
Yep.
Brian's tried that too. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of us start that way. We're told to start that way. And of course, we're not against tracking. Tracking is definitely important, and it's required in all budgets, but it's not the right place to start. Mm-hmm. So all of us, I'm sure, can easily spend more than we earn in a month, right? We know we can spend more. We don't need a month of overspending to prove that we need a budget right now. The guilt that led you to sit down and budget in the first place tells me you know you were spending too much. Or the other problem with starting with the process that way is you can be like my family and say, well, the diet starts Monday. So then Sunday night, they're taking that extra piece of cake because they got to get the calories in before they count, right? We got to get the spending in before our financial diet starts. So it kind of starts you off in a worse place, actually. So why doesn't the elephant's plan work? Well, as mentioned earlier, part of the definition of a budget is that it is forward looking. So having a month-long history isn't important in order to start making a budget. When you look forward, you should start with estimating your income before you look at your expenses. We call that having an income first mentality. So basically, all that means is that the first step in my budget is to figure out how much I have to work with. And then we look at what we want to spend that money on. And that order matters because what I want can't be the baseline for my budget. It has to start with what I have. Hopefully that makes sense. So when you start a budget by looking at what you have already spent in the past or what you want to spend, that's what we call a spend first mentality. You're saying, here's what I want to spend. How do I make that work? That's what happens when the car salesman says, let's get you into a car you want, and then we'll figure out the payment that will work for you, right? Spend first mentality is backwards. And you end up buying a way overpriced minivan covered in dog hair that will break down before you ever get it paid off because you looked at the monthly bill rather than the big picture. Obviously, that is from personal experience right there. So once I want something, I spend more than I have. Exactly, right? Super good at spending more than we make. So I know we said we wouldn't be sharing life hacks in this, but here's one anyway. You will never find happiness if you focus on what you want first or focus on what you want to buy. Not financial happiness, not any type of happiness. If we focus first on what we have, instead of what we want, that's where we can find that happiness. So we learned from the elephant that tracking is important, and we will put that in our tool belt. We definitely want to use that, but our budget needs to start with how much income we have to work with. So that's income first mentality.
Okay, so we're going to go to the second poll question. Let me turn that on in there. Gotta find it. Launch. There we go. Okay, so what did the lion tell the giraffe to do?
Oh, I like that quote, Brian.
Yeah, if you have any questions so far, the poll is you can just ask the questions in the chat too. It's a good pause in our talking. But yeah, what did the lion tell the giraffe to do? There was save money, ask for a raise, join an MLM, or track expenses better.
How do we access the poll?
So it should be in the very, if you're on a desktop, it's on the right corner. It's the little shapes down there. If you click on that, and then there should be a poll. If you're on a phone, I think it's the three little dots on the very bottom right.
And then it's under activities.
Yeah,
There.
activities.
It's called
That's
activities.
What it is.
So yeah, there's like a triangle, square, circle.
Okay, so we got join an MLM, track expenses better, save money, good ideas. Okay, we're gonna end it in 3, 2, 1. There we go.
Okay. So, our lion was the correct answer, and he has the answer that everyone hopes for and wants to hear. Just make more money and all your problems go away, right? Please don't fall into this trap. Actually, I should rephrase that. You will probably fall into this trap. But when you do, please have the courage and the humility to notice it and admit that it's not your money situation that needs to change. It's you. That sounds mean. I apologize, but it's just a change in perspective that will help you take control, to stop being the victim. We're taking something that's outside our ability to control, which is more money, and changing it into something that you can control, which is your spending. And I know that there are people who are struggling to afford the basic necessities. And so if that's you, this advice is not directed at you, of course. But I will say that most of us think that we're in that category and that we need more money to fix everything, but we really don't. What we really need is to learn to live within the income that we have. And I know it's not easy and it's not always fun, but for most of us, it is doable. So hoping that more money will fix everything is such a big temptation. It goes back to that spend first way of thinking, right? It's saying, here's what I want. Now I got to figure out how to make it happen. I don't want any limitations. I don't want to have to choose. I want everything. But Willy Wonka taught us best what happens when we want everything. We go down the garbage chute with Veruca Salt. Honestly, I wish we all made more money. I wish we didn't have to choose. I wish it could be that easy, but it isn't. And more money isn't the answer, especially easy, quick money. Trying to get rich quick is not going to solve any of your problems. So until you admit that, you're going to be stuck and you will always be the victim and you will always be taken advantage of, which makes life kind of hard. So you won't see meaningful change in your life until you stop blaming your income. And again, we're taking something that is outside our ability to control, which is more money, and changing it into something that you can control, which is your spending. So when you change that perspective, you can feel empowered, you feel in control, and you begin finding gratitude, which is a great way to find happiness, like Brian's quote up there. And you can do that within whatever limitations you have in your life. So that's what we learned from the giraffe's failure with the lion, is what you have right now is probably enough.
Yeah. So we're going to go to the next poll. Let me go in and turn that on. Scroll down here. Launch. There we go. Okay, what was the Chipmunk's easy savings plan? We got fill in a crafty printed chart, save $1 today, $2 tomorrow, save all your change in a jar, and clip coupons. These are all ideas that we found pretty common online. Nice. Okay, close it off in 3, 2, 1. There we go.
Okay. So our chipmunk Her idea was to save the dollar today, $2 tomorrow, but it could have been any one of those, right?
Yeah.
Um, Essentially, her plan was to save or spend less and save more. You've probably seen some of these ideas or cute printables or whatever. Um, and it's wonderful that you want to save money. And we agree that saving is important, but it's not a budget. They're not the same thing. And that saved money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah. So you might have seen commercials or even like financial influencers on social media that talk about how they got on a budget, they started saving, and they paid off a ton of debt. And that is great for them. But did you know that in order to pay off $200,000 of debt in 6 months, it means you had to have made more than $200,000 in 6 months? So they didn't pay off their debt just because they started budgeting well. They paid it off because they made money on their social media platform, selling advice and getting viewers and sponsorships.
Yeah. So for most of us, saving and paying off debt is going to be a slow process. And that's okay. You can't save or pay off more than you earn. And in reality, it's probably going to be a very small piece of what you earn that can go towards those things because you still have to live day to day. So it's normal for those goals to take years instead of months. Um, but we also want you to stop feeling guilty every time you spend money. You have to spend money to live, and we want you to spend money. So savings is important, but it's not the only reason that you make money. It's okay to spend some of it on the things that make you happy right now. You have to just find that balance. So from the Chipmunk, we learned that saving and paying off debt are important, but we also need to remember that it takes time and it's not the only thing that matters.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go to our next poll question. Let me, yeah, and I got to find it and turn it on there. There it goes. Okay, so why is the J the animal that represents the envelope system? So this one was not in the book. You're not going to know this one just because you read the chapter we gave you. But yeah, they store caches of seeds and nuts. They're smartest of all the birds. We have a relative named Jay, or they work together as a group.
Which we do have a relative named Jay.
We do.
He actually drew the pictures for the book. So
He did. But that's not why we named it after that.
yeah, spoiler alert.
Nice. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Oh, good. We got a fifth one in there.
Nice.
Nice.
Okay, so each animal really was chosen for a reason. And the J was because these birds store seeds and nuts to retrieve later. So good job guessing that one. They will travel up to 2.5 miles from their original location, which, man, that just seems like a whole lot of work to me. Um, but our J brings something that the other animals haven't given us yet. This is the first time that we actually see a real budget. This is that typical budgeting method that most of us have heard of and tried. It's the same basic idea that your grandparents probably used. It just looks forward 1 month, considers your income and expenses, and tries to stop you from spending more than you earn. So it does check off all those boxes on what a budget is supposed to be. Um, Almost every budgeting program or method or app that you find will be based on what the J suggested. And this works just fine for some people, but I'm going to talk about why it doesn't work actually for most of us. Why budgeting this way is not a very happy experience. So there's some problems with it, and none of them are related to anything that you or I did wrong.
No.
So, what are some of the problems with a typical budget? First of all, a month is just too long. We've all had the top ramen week because our money didn't last as long as we thought it would, right? Or maybe it turns into a credit card week. Sometimes you're not even near the end of the month before those envelopes or categories are empty. There's just too much that happens in 1 month. Can you even remember what you were doing this day last month? January 24th. Can you even remember? I don't know. To me, it's too long. And the typical month that we plan for never actually happens. Some kid always has a birthday party that they end up having to go to, right? So life is crazy and unpredictable, and that is not going to change anytime soon. So month is too long. Second of all, there's too many categories. If you've done a budget like this, have any of you done a budget like this? And if so, how many categories did you have? Estimate, rough estimate.
Yeah, so put in the chat how many categories you tried to use.
I guess nobody mentioned that they've tried an envelope system, so maybe you
have. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you haven't tried one, that's okay.
Oh, okay. Brian has sometimes up to 20-ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Not sure if you haven't done one.
6 to 8, that's not too bad.
Nice.
Some programs that we've seen online have
only 5.
Wow. Some of them have like 30 or 40 or even more that you have to consider and plan out to the penny. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of work. Even 5 or 6 or 8, 20, that's a lot of work. And it's a lot of work at the beginning of every single month to figure it all out. Then it's a lot of work throughout the month to keep track of all those details, right? And that work would be fine if it was helpful. But once again, how well can we predict down to the penny everything that's going to happen in the next month? You can't, and you're going to get most of it wrong. So this isn't a great system for someone who can't predict the future, but even if you can, it's still a lot of work.
Yeah, we've also got 6-ish and a dozen. Yeah.
Okay. So these first 2 issues combine to create a really bad relationship with ourselves and with our money. And so we call this the puppet master puppet relationship. So at the beginning of the month with a typical budget, you are the puppet master. You hold all the power, including your psychic abilities to know what's going to happen that month, right? And you create this perfect budget with all of these amounts down to the penny in all 40 categories. You have it color coded and planned out perfectly, and it's a beautiful piece of bullet journal art or spreadsheet or however you do it. But the problem is that for the rest of the month, you now have to change roles. Now you're the puppet. You no longer have any say in what should be happening because you're supposed to follow that very detailed plan that the puppet master laid out for you. So with every mistake you make or every even justifiable change, you see that puppet master shaking their head in disappointment because the puppet is not supposed to go off script, but you do because you have to. So it's a frustrating experience where you're fighting with yourself. And even though there's no way you could have predicted everything correctly at the beginning of the month, you're still trying to. And then you hold yourself up to that standard. So it's definitely a lose-lose situation. So this power struggle is a real problem. In fact, it might be the biggest problem because none of us like to be told what to do, especially with our money. So the last issue that I'm going to mention with a typical budget is that it makes trade-offs and consequences hard to see. So we deal with trade-off decisions every day. Because my money is limited, when I spend it on one thing, that means I can't buy something else. So for example, if I go to a restaurant and I have $5, I can decide to buy ice cream, but that means I can't buy the fries and soda. So that's a trade-off decision and my consequence. There isn't a right or wrong answer. It's just a choice. And at the moment, if I value ice cream more than fries and a soda, and that's what I buy, then that's fine. So I can make pretty good decisions when the trade-off and consequence are happening right now. Ice cream's way better than fries, so I'm a happy camper. That consequence is a good one, right? But it's a lot harder when we push that consequence piece way off into the future. We don't care about our future selves as much as we do our current selves. That's why we don't do lots of things we should do, right? Like eating right or exercising, because my enjoyment right now is worth a lot more than possible health problems 20 years from now. The trade-off decision and the consequences are very far apart. For example, I probably shouldn't have had the ice cream or the fries. So 20 years is obviously too long, but even the first of the month and the end of the month are really far apart. So it's very easy to spend all of my money right now on the things that I want without understanding that there will be a consequence for that choice at the end of the month. Logically, you know it's going to be an issue, but you still kick it off and hope that things will work out. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, it isn't your fault. We're all built like this. If you remember the marshmallow experiment where the kids have to wait. If they wait and not eat their marshmallow, then they'll get a second marshmallow. And they can't do it, right? Peter, did you have a question?
Or did you
Or
just
was it
say
an accidental hand raise? Okay, that's fine. You were just stretching. That's fine. So the problem is that typical budgets just don't help you deal with this very well. So we learned from the J that a month is too long for several reasons, and that too many categories is just too much work.
Yep. Okay, so we got the last poll question here. Let me go turn it on. It's going to be all the way on the bottom.
It's my favorite poll question.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to have to scroll all the way down, and it's why does the giraffe get to be the hero of our story? There's lots of options in there.
Also, not a had to read the story to know.
Yeah, yep. Didn't have to read the story to know this one.
So we've got giraffes are the tallest land animal. They sleep standing up. Baby giraffes can walk within an hour of being born. A giraffe's legs are over 6 feet tall. Or all of the above.
Yeah. And I didn't put in Laura's favorite one.
I know. My favorite giraffe fact is that giraffes can kill a lion with one swift kick. It's been my favorite giraffe fact since I was in high school.
Okay, so
we've got
a lot of votes. That's good.
Votes.
Okay, we're going to end it.
Okay. Yeah. So, giraffes are just awesome. All of the above and more. So how do we fix this then? How do we apply all the principles that we've talked about so far and fix all those issues that have been brought up? Well, in 2010, we were placed in a situation that helped us find a solution. So 3 years prior to that, we had filed for bankruptcy. And since then, we were trying to use that opportunity to be better at handling our money. We tried everything that we could think of, including all the ways that our animals in the story taught us, but nothing was working very well. So we were starting to believe that we were the problem. But near the end of 2010, Nigel was starting his first semester of grad school, and we only had student loans to live off of. We didn't have any other income. Nigel was going to school full time, and I was having our second baby, and I had a 4-year-old to stay at home with. So this was it. And we had our little chunk of loan money, and we knew it had to last us until the next time we got our loan money in January. So we were thinking, how do we make this work? And we decided to do something we hadn't done before. So this was our big moment that changed everything for us. We started by paying our rent for the whole semester, which was our only real fixed expense because it included all the utilities and stuff, which is nice when you're going to school that they do that for you. But then we divided what was left into weekly amounts. We figured if we could stick to one weekly number every week until January, that we could make it. So I'm happy to say that we did make it, and that experience changed our lives. So after years of failure and shame and doubt, suddenly we were responsible, capable people who could make good financial decisions. And it was hard sometimes when we had to miss out on going out with friends, or we had to purchase things we needed instead of things that we wanted. But it was an incredible change that affected more than just our finances. It changed our self-esteem and how we saw ourselves. It gave us confidence in our choices because we suddenly were in control over our money instead of feeling like it was controlling us. So The solution we figured out is what we eventually called the happy giraffe budget. We got everything down to just our income and our fixed expenses and a weekly allowance. So, compared to a traditional budget, there are two big changes that made this work so well. Um, the first thing is that instead of trying to estimate every penny to every possible category, if you start with only caring about income and fixed expenses, things get a lot easier. So when we were in school, like I said, that income was really easy because it was the student loans. And now, like if you have a salary, that can be pretty simple as well. If your income is not so consistent, then it does require some estimating. And we suggest just being very conservative with those numbers. But for most situations, you should have a basic idea of what this number already is. So you start with your income, and then your fixed expenses are your reoccurring bills. And they're the same way, right? In our situation at college, we just had to pay rent, and that was really easy to figure out a few months ahead. And most of us have bills like that are predictable. They happen on the same day every month, and they're usually for the same amount. So that's the first big change we figured out, that those two things are really easy to estimate, even when you're trying to look further ahead than just the next month. Mm-hmm. The second big idea was how to handle the rest of that budget. In our story, we paid our fixed expenses, and then everything that was left over, we divided into weeks. And that's how you handle everything else in your budget. It's really that simple. You just look forward, figure out your income, you take out your fixed expenses, even though you don't actually pay all of your bills right away like we did. That's okay. And then you just divide what's left into weeks, and you give yourself a weekly allowance. So we call it your happy money. And there's no other categories or measures or anything else to keep track of, just that one number. And we did talk about tracking with the elephant. Our budget isn't magic. There's no magic wand where you don't have to track anything at all. But what our budget does is just make it so much easier, like super easy. And week by week, you just figure out the best way to spend your money. And every week you get a new allowance. And that is the secret sauce that makes it all work. That is what fixes all the other issues that we've talked about. Yeah. So we're going to give you an example of how this works. We have a fictional person, Ryan. Let's see. With respect to income, how do you compute income when we're withholding for taxes? I withhold way more than I need.
Oh.
That's a you question.
I would have to figure that out. That's hard when you're trying to withhold for taxes at the same time. But yeah, hopefully you've done taxes in the past and you know kind of what that should be. And that's okay if you withhold more than you need. Like we said, we want you to be more conservative with whatever you put into this, because your whole budget is going to be based on that number.
Yeah. I don't know if hopefully that answered your question. If not, we can, okay, good. Okay. So here's our example. So we're going to take this fictional person, Ryan, and we're going to look forward 24 months. So like we said, typical budget looks forward 1 month, right? But we suggest looking forward 2 years because it helps see that bigger picture, especially because it gives you time for payments that pop up less often, like Amazon Prime or car insurance or your income tax. That's a great example. Ryan's income is $1,500 every 2 weeks. That's his not income, but take home.
Take home,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he takes home $1,500 every 2 weeks, and that is $78,000 for the next 2 years. Plus, he has $2,000 in the bank right now. So that gives him $80,000 to work with. That's going to be his starting number. His fixed expenses add up to $46,200 for the next 2 years. So that's all of his bills, whether they're due monthly or once a year. That's all of his bills in total. So we're going to subtract all of those fixed expenses first. So income minus fix is 33,800. That's left to handle everything else. Then he's going to divide that into his weeks, and he ends up with $325 to spend. And that's it. That's the whole process. That what it looks like to create an entire budget. And you're set and super simple. So now Ryan just has to manage that weekly money, and then he knows that he's good for the next 2 years. Everything else is covered. He just has to focus on not going over that weekly amount. He doesn't have to worry anything else about month to month. There's no other categories to track. It's just really simple and effective. So we actually have a free spreadsheet, and we're going to show you an app also that we use. We have those on our website, and we're going to show you those in just a minute. But first, I want to explain why this is so effective. So if you'll just bear with me a couple more minutes, I just want to tell you how this fixes so many of those issues that we have with that typical budget. So in the chat, if we'll do this little exercise, I want you to write down all the different hats that you wear in your life, all the different positions, or at least a few of them. If you're a mom, that's rude of me. I shouldn't say if you're a mom, you'll have like 100, but dads have them too. All people have all the hats, but I guess it's just my personal experience. I got a lot of hats. So if you'll put those in the chat. My daughter makes our slides for us, and mom, daughter, sister, wife, all of those have like 800 hats underneath each one, right? My daughter is, like I said, she's the one that made the slides. So she gave us a couple examples of a few of my hats. Dad, father, employee, business owner, ecclesiastical leader, volunteer, friend, coach. Yeah, Brian, you didn't include eating on there. You are a professional eater. Dad, ex-husband, managing attorney, Buddhist practitioner. That's cool.
Pickleball players love pickleball.
Musician, activist.
Nice.
So feel free to keep going. But the point is that we all have a lot of hats, right? The Happy Giraffe budget wears 2 hats. It has a long-term planning hat and a short-term managing hat. Mel threw up some more up there.
Ooh, accountant. Nice.
These are cool. Can I just throw in there really fast that you guys have been our best class with responses and chat? Like, this has been awesome. So good job to you. You're good class takers. You can add that to your list of hats. So sorry, I got distracted. Okay, so our Happy Giraffe budget wears 2 hats, right? So when we're focused on the long-term hat, we're thinking about our future. We're looking at our bills. Do we want to get rid of Hulu or Netflix? You're thinking about savings. How much should we put in an emergency fund? Or how much should I put in my 401k? You're thinking of paying off debt, or how much you can afford to put towards getting it all paid off. So this is where you're making big decisions that affect the direction and projection of your financial life. When we're wearing our short-term hat, we're thinking about all the day-to-day stuff: gas for the car, groceries, what kids' activities, eating out, clothes. It's a lot to consider, right? So if a budget only has one of these hats, it's not a good budget. If you only wear one of the hats that you wrote on your list and ignore the rest of those hats indefinitely, you're not going to be a good you, right? That's why.
If Peter was just a retiree, that wouldn't go well. Or if Jason just did disc golf, I would never get to play pickleball with him.
Okay. You have a lot of pickleball friends on here, don't you?
We do.
And we know if you just do pickleball, you at least have an angry wife at home. Okay. So that's, let me rewind. Okay. So you're not going to be a good you if you only focus on one of your hats. And that's why sometimes other budgets don't work, because they just focus on one of those extremes of either only saving and only worrying about long-term goals. Um, because then our day-to-day stuff suffers, right? And so you don't want to stick with it. Or if it just focuses on what you want right now, it doesn't give you that security of being prepared for the future. So with the happy draft budget, you keep these two things in balance. There's still a little tension between your roles as long term and short term because we don't have an unlimited amount of money. Um, but now you always have some level of power to make decisions, which is a happier, healthier relationship with yourself and with your money, like we said. There's lots of other reasons this method of doing things works so well. So I could go more into why weekly instead of monthly is such a big deal. I could go more into how it helps you control your money instead of your money controlling you. There's more flexibility. It helps you see those trade-off choices and the consequences that we talked about earlier in a new way. It helps you and your spouse work better together. If you're on a joint budget, like that's a big deal if you're married. Um, I don't have time to dive into all of them right now because we would like you to have a Saturday. Um, but it really is amazing. And I completely understand if you're skeptical at this moment, that's okay. Just know that I have lived on this budget for over 13 years through many different life and financial situations, and it has worked through all of that. So, Nigel really wants to show you his spreadsheet. It's his little baby. And don't do this right now, but it is on our website for free. You can download it there and he'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to let him take over.
Yep. So I need to start though with why we need the spreadsheet. So in our story earlier when we were going to school, we talked about living off student loans, and we created this idea for how to budget differently then. So at that time, we had all of the money sitting in our bank account on the very first day of our budget. And for most of us, there's a thing called cash flow that's an issue because there's a constant back and forth of money going in and going out. So if I have a mortgage payment due on the first and I don't get paid until the second, that can be a problem. So earlier when we mentioned that you can look forward 2 years, income minus fixed expenses divided what's left into weeks, that only works if you have all of your money available on day one, and that's probably not your situation. I'm going to cut off the webinar right there because the rest just covers how to use our spreadsheet. Whether you use our spreadsheet or the app, both tools are built to help you deal with the cash flow issue that we mentioned at the end. Now, if you're ready to take the next step, here are a few great options. If you want to go deeper into the system, check out our book, The Happy Draft Budget. It's available on Amazon in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. It's full of real-life stories and insights, and just like the webinar, we tried to make it fun and easy to follow. If you're ready to get started, download our free app. It walks you through the system step by step, and we've got videos on our channel if you need more help. If you don't like apps, that's okay. Grab our free spreadsheet. We've got a full walkthrough video for that too. Whichever step you choose next, I'm glad you joined us. I hope this helps you build a happier, more empowered relationship with your money.